Hello and welcome to another episode of the Leaders Retreat. My name is Jeff Burstein. I am a certified coach and trainer in the L-EAF framework and methodologies. And today we are wrapping up a three-part series on adaptive leadership. So please, if you haven't seen the previous two episodes, please go back and feel free to watch them. In the first one, we talk about the core competencies that an adaptive leader will be able to go ahead and manifest. And then we followed it up with a deeper dive, a greater degree of focus into one of the capabilities that an adaptive leader learns as part of the coaching kata, called reflective listening, a listening technique that really does help to unlock the potential for improvement in other people. And today we're just going to kind of bring it all together and talk about the why of this approach and how all these interconnected pieces that are part of the framework, the various methodologies that we talked about in the first episode, the skills, the practices that we dive into in the second, how they really are intended to all come together to offer a solution that is the next evolution for education, where we focus on leadership, taking that first move to help to create the environment in which additional evolution can take place, where even getting to the point where it reaches into the classroom, and then we are starting to expose our students to these ways of thinking and working collaboratively, all to help make them and prepare them for really being able to differentiate between systems that are relatively known and we understand how they work, versus systems that involve complexity or chaos, and there is a great deal of unknown. And in order to improve those systems and be able to influence the outcomes from those systems, how to go ahead and actually take the unknown and move it to the known. So today I'm joined with Simon Holtzapfel. We are out here in the Berkshires, and we're going to talk a little bit about those three components. So Simon, one of the things that you are spending a good deal of focus of your time on is really to help educators understand the power that really gets unlocked when learning this technique of reflective listening. And how that, as the overall practice of the coaching kata, is an essential component for adaptive leaders who are looking to really create student-centered education systems.
Yeah. Great. The practice of reflective listening is something I came across a couple of years ago. And the practice came out of my observation that a lot of educational leaders would talk a lot about really wanting change, knowing they needed change, but they kept running up against various obstacles. And what they struggled to do was to initiate information exchange, communication, with the stakeholders within the school to understand their, interest, disinterest, et cetera, with working in a different way. And so what reflective listening, what the practice does is it gives the school leader or the change curious person the ability to literally listen, to have conversations with members of their community, to understand better that person's hopes, fears, et cetera, in working in a different way. And reflective listening is easily viewed if you go to The Sopranos TV show. Early on in season 1, there's a series of conversations that Tony has with Dr. Malfi. And that is textbook motivational interviewing, because she makes very open-ended questions. And then after she asks the question and she elicits the information from Tony, she starts to do what's called reflection. And reflecting is when you say back to the person you're talking to what you think they meant in whatever their concern or their utterance was. And by you doubling back to confirm meaning, fidelity, right? So I'm doing my reflective listening and I'm hearing from them, some piece of information, and I'm saying back to them, oh, you're blah, blah, blah. And so in this upcoming webinar for NIIS, what we're going to do is I'm just going to model the conversation, so you can sort of hear how you can do this. It's very straightforward stuff. They're great scripts, other places, and we'll give you the bibliography if you want that. But reflective listening is a practice that's just not that hard to get into. And what you get out of it is just remarkable when you learn how to stop unintentionally putting up roadblocks to communication flow by being just a little bit, by putting up roadblocks inadvertently, because we're as leaders in the old way of working conditioned to sort of assume certain things about authority and expertise, leadership intent, all those things, and those rules have broken down in the last 20 years. And I feel like I'm rambling.
Sure.
But
No, that's fine. And so, you mentioned a couple of times, you mentioned this leadership by intent. And when we talk about the coaching kata,
yeah.
Maybe you could explain a little bit about how, how that is just a piece of the leadership by intent,
Yeah.
and what that unlocks in educational institutions when it comes to bringing about change.
Sure. I'm trying to think of what the most useful way to the audience would be to start to answer that question. Let's just say that I'm a teacher and I'm wondering sort of why would I want to do this? Is that?
Well, so I would say almost, why, if we're a leader, why would I be interested in adaptive listening? What is it that, this coaching kata as one of the practices, how is that going to help me to leverage this pillar of intentional leadership?
Sure.
And what is it that intentional leadership really unlocks in my organization?
Yeah. Okay, so the coaching kata is composed of a bunch of different competencies. Reflective listening is one of them. Leadership by intent is another one of them. In doing the coaching kata, in learning these practices, what you're then able to do is help people understand, basic decision making. And by reflective listening, you help people think through and talk through the big decisions they need to make. And you're like an expert friend to them because you know how to ask them about the decision in ways that don't push them any which way, but helps them genuinely discover sort of what needs to be fixed, where they need to go, that sort of stuff.
And when we talk about intentional leaders, what they're really providing for is that directionality.
Yes, purpose.
They're creating that environment of trust,
yes,
where I'm going to trust my teams to be aligned on where we're trying to get to be experts in their domain.
Yep.
So that I don't have to be the expert for everyone. Right? Again, the reflective listening coming in and shifting the way that leaders listen to their teams, where I'm no longer listening as an expert. Right?
So, and the real essence of it is, in communication, there's something that goes out, that gets expressed, and that's something that gets received. We're focusing not so much on how you express things, but how you receive. That is the listening part. Expert listening is not taught. Expert listening is a woefully untapped resource in all of our cognitive capabilities. And thank you to the caring people who developed this method over 30 years ago and have propagated it, widely through, lots of industries and organizations that want to help humans have better lives, and have less stress and have more enjoyment in the learning.
Yeah, and through a simple series of workshops and with the improvement kata, coaching kata model, that's really just an opportunity for leaders to just participate in learning those, as you said, those steps in the how do I tame complexity? How do I move the unknown to known by taking small little steps? How do I make that process visible so that I am not creating additional cognitive load on myself, so that I can actually invest that brain power into solving the problems? And then that next step from the coaching kata is, how do I now enable that for my teams so that I no longer have to be the superhero for everyone, and all I have to do is set the intent the direction as a leader, and now I'm more comfortable being on a, as part of a leading teams that are more adaptable to situations.
And they can adapt because they get better information transfer, and they get better information transfer because they're practicing reflective listening.
Sure.
It's a very straightforward proposition.
Exactly. And now when we think about in terms of when it talks about what does it take to really get, knowledge workers, the type of people who are solving new problems every day, and they're aware that they're sitting in a complex system, right? How do we get them motivated? Well, we know it starts with purpose, right? That leadership by intent model, we know that can get unlocked through reflective listening, right? So the other two components, right, is, okay, are we going to trust our teams to self-organize, having a framework in which the organization, the entity understands that information flows down from leaders to the teams where the work gets done, and then tactical value, the solutions, they flow up. And they flow out through leadership out into the customer or the students or the community in this case. So when we think about the other components of the adaptive leadership series, what does it take to be a truly well-rounded 360-degree adaptive leader? We go back to the first sets of competencies that we talked about in episode 1, right?
Yep.
The ability to flow strategy down to your teams, right?
Those are purpose conduits.
Those are purpose conduits. That is how you become an intentional leader, and being able to focus on just those skills of creating purposeful messaging, right? Creating clear and clearly articulated milestones, and learning how to do that in collaboration with the people who are ultimately going to, for themselves, pull accountability, right? So that whole framework of nested workflow and the methodologies of workflow, where we have the leaders demonstrating to their teams that, yes, we too work in this manner. We follow the same values and principles of the workflow methodology. We do the same 6 practices, right? And that's how we flow our strategic value down, our strategic vision down to the teams. That's how we go ahead and demonstrate out to our communities, to our customers, the value that as an entity we're bringing out. It's following those same 6 practices. Right, and it's as that work gets broken down smaller to fit in the nested working cycles until it flows into the classroom, where it's now being done in nested learning cycles.
Learning flow boards.
Right, and learning flow boards where now students are mirroring the behavior that they're seeing the leaders of the schools do, and their teachers have learned the sister pedagogy to where they could bring it into their classrooms, right? And then you talk about value flow, right? The basic skills of being able to go ahead and visualize any system, whether it's outward facing towards our students, our communities, our parents, whether it's inward facing, how we help each other and organize as a team so that over time we can tame the chaos of that system.
Well, we're not sure we can tame it, but we can improve it. Because in a truly chaotic environment,
we can understand it.
Yes.
We can visualize it.
And we can surface the boulders that are causing turbulence right now.
That's true, because when the system doesn't, when the customers aren't flowing through that system as expected, we've uncovered an opportunity for us to apply some of the skills learned in the kata to help uncover that again and make more of it known.
That's right.
And the leader who has now shifted their way of leading from one of I'm the expert, and now they're tapping into parroting and reflective listening skills that they've learned and practiced by doing the kata themselves on both sides, as a practitioner, as a coach, as a leader, right? Now they're able to bring that together.
That's right. And it makes it really easy for teachers. Because as a teacher myself, if I had learned reflective listening in 1996, when I walked in the classroom, I would be way better, would have been way better. Seriously.
As a teacher, I'm going to trust you, right? I've not stood in front of a classroom. I mean, I guess, Hebrew school counts, I guess.
I had seen Command and Control, so that was where I started.
Right. And so I know myself, I just did not interact well with those kind of systems.
Right.
Command and control, no. Explain to me why.
Right. Luckily, I worked in schools that had a strong respect for anarchy. Seriously, I credit the leaders of the schools that I worked in
Sure.
for actually understanding a lot of this and doing it, imperfectly because they couldn't systematize it, but intentionally in the right direction. So I think there are lots of school leaders who are like, oh yeah, I want to be that Marquette type person, right?
Sure.
We can all get there, and it's actually not that hard.
Sure. And when you talk about Marquette, you're specifically referring to retired Captain David Marquette, author of Turn the Ship Around.
Yes.
Who tells his story of intentional leadership and how it allowed him to have transformational and like
So it's the enabling constraint.
exponential, breakthrough when he joined a new ship.
And it was the constraint of I won't do these things.
Exactly.
That's the enabling constraint to that system, and it's self-organized.
Right, and it was done within a context that was completely unfamiliar because everybody expects the captain to issue every single order versus to say, hey, intentionally, we're trying to achieve this. I trust you all know how to do your job, and I will reserve one order for myself.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I will trust that you know how to do your job, and I will lead you through intent.
Well, he also knew that a lot of them didn't know how to ask for help well.
Sure, but they were in systems where they were expected.
They were discouraged from.
They were
expressing
discouraged
need.
for, and how similar is that to a classroom, right? Like I need to be able to do these things, otherwise it's pass fail. Versus, how do we actually learn?
Right.
Okay, and then that brings us to
it's how do we carry our learning outside the classroom door in a
Sure.
way that's useful to us.
meaningful, right? In a meaningful way.
In a way that's useful to us.
Sure. All right, which challenges the school to find the meaning in the learning for the student.
Or at least open the door to the student and say meaning could be in this space. Why don't you walk in there?
Or it could be here.
Right.
Right. It might be across the hall.
It could be across the hall. It could be in the cafeteria.
Yeah, you don't know where you'll find. Might be out on the fields.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Could be in the jungle gym.
Sure.
Under the jungle gym.
And so lastly, that brings us to the last thing that we talked about in session one, which was really nested workflow and workflow, right? That framework in which we're encouraging that educational institutions take a look at. It's very similar to the structures that have been popping up in very successful organizations, both professionally and in government for 20 years now, and probably even more, because they are realizing that they are no longer operating in the context of we know all the problems and how the system works.
And we have all the relevant information
And we have
start
all
solving.
the relevant information, and it allows them to now restructure and reorganize to flow information differently, and allow and create the context that's going to allow for that. What does it really take? Those three cornerstones of motivating knowledge workers, which is purpose, which is autonomy, and then access to the tools and knowledge that are needed to actually try to improve the system, or try to learn more about it, right? Really try to
make next week better than this week.
Try to make just a little bit.
Yeah.
And do that
in one
week.
small way.
In
every
one
week.
small way. All right. So, if you haven't had an opportunity to watch the two prior series, hopefully we've, given you enough information to give you an overall picture of what the intention is behind the work that, we're helping leaders in education, do, which is to, explore this adaptive leadership mindset, where you start focusing on new ways of working, pulling from, years and years of proven, science and management theory and
management practice.
Management practice, I guess. It's management practice.
That's the lean thing about it.
Right. It's management practice. It's not about the theory anymore. And it's like, these are the things that are working.
Right.
Do those
Try
things.
more of those
Try
things.
more of those things. And, in our next series, we're going to be exploring a whole new series of ideas that are going to, speak to this overall way of working, but it'll be through a different lens. We hope to be able to kick it off. We have some, people we're talking to who are practitioners in this way of leading in schools. And we're just kind of finalizing it, but our goal is to, again, take another 3 parts where we're going to explore, one or two, do a deeper dive area, and then in our third session, kind of bring it all back together. Please feel free to, reach out anytime. We invite you to, put yourself on the invitation to our third Friday of every month Leaders Retreat, where we get together with, leaders who are interested in talking about these kind of things and sharing their experiences from trying these ways of working in educational systems. Thank you very much.